Hey guys, tonight we travel to a world where love was inked on reeds, sealed with wax, and carried across sandstorms. A world where even the most stoic pharaoh had a secret scroll of poetry tucked beneath his throne. You stretch out under your blanket, maybe with a cup of tea in hand, and open your imagination to a place where the air smells like lotus blossoms and roasted barley, and the stars above the Nile seem close enough to read by. We're diving into the tender, complicated, and surprisingly relatable world of ancient Egyptian love letters, from sassy side comments to romantic ramblings that could make a modern teenager blush. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, comment below where in the world you're watching from and what time it is right now. Are you in bed? On the couch? Sneaking this at your desk? I won't tell. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself walking barefoot across a sun-warmed stone floor in a room that smells of papyrus and crushed frankincense. The library is dim but inviting, filled with scrolls so ancient they might crumble if you breathe too hard. A single shaft of light breaks through a carved window and lands on a low stone shelf, right where you spot it. A scroll with faded red twine and a tag shaped like an ankh. No one's touched it in centuries. It hums with secrets. You reach for it slowly, half expecting a trap door to open, Indiana Jones style. But nope, just dust, quiet, and something like a sigh from the past. You unroll the scroll, and suddenly the room changes. Now you're not you. You're someone else. Someone from 3,000 years ago. The linen around your waist is scratchy, your jewelry is a little too heavy, and there's sand between your toes. Again, you stand in the middle of Thebes, a bustling city where love letters don't arrive by email, but by servants, doves, and occasionally, really determined cats. Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptians were the first to create written love poetry, or just the first to brag about it on walls, but what's clear is, they were very into romantic expression. In fact, many believe that their love letters weren't just for communication. They were performances, complete with rhyme, metaphor, and divine references. If your crush didn't at least compare you to a goddess or the shade of a palm tree, were they even trying? The scroll you opened was written by someone named Neferu, a minor priest's daughter with a sharp pen and very dramatic opinions on eye contact. Her writing starts mid-thought, as if the reader has interrupted her. You passed me by again, walking near the date palms, and yet your gaze slipped past me like a heron on the Nile. Must I become invisible, or do you only see what shines like gold? You can almost hear her voice, sarcastic, pouty, deeply offended. It's oddly comforting to realize that unrequited love is older than the pyramids. And yes, Neferu included a postscript. She wants her suitor to return her comb. Typical. Outside, the streets buzz with gossip. Market vendors yell over each other about figs, honey cakes, and magical amulets, blessed by Thoth himself no less. A woman nearby is whispering about how someone saw the young pharaoh slipping a folded papyrus under a temple door, addressed to the one whose anklets jingle in my dreams. You can't help but smile. That's either sweet or slightly stalkerish. Hard to tell. The scene shifts again. Now you're standing in the scriptorium of a noble's estate, where two scribes, both named Hui, because of course they are, argue over the spelling of "my heart trembles." One insists on the metaphor of a startled ibis. The other says hearts don't tremble, they melt. They eventually settle on "my heart dances like a monkey at a funeral," which you admit has a certain flair. Nearby, a boy barely old enough to hold a stylus is copying love phrases from a master scroll. It's their version of homework. His favorite? Your voice is more refreshing than water drawn from a shaded well. He giggles as he writes it. You're fairly certain he's never even drawn water. As the sun sets over the city, the world slows. Dusk in ancient Egypt is a soft, golden hush. You hear the distant rhythm of drums, maybe a festival nearby, or maybe someone trying to impress their neighbor's daughter again. The streets begin to empty, but inside homes and gardens, candles are lit, and letters, folded, sealed, or simply whispered into the ear of a trusted servant, begin their slow journey through doorways and temple courtyards. And so does yours. That scroll you found, you're still holding it. Maybe it's time to read a little deeper. After all, the story's just beginning. You hold the scroll a little tighter, its papyrus edges dry and crackling like old leaves, yet somehow alive. The ink strokes are confident, playful, like someone writing not just to be read, but to be remembered. You imagine Neferu again, reclining beneath a date palm, feet dipped in the cool water of a garden pool, stylus in hand, tongue poking between her teeth in concentration. She's writing not just for her beloved, but maybe also to one-up that smug girl from the baker's family. You know the one. As your eyes adjust to the light of this memory, the world sharpens around you. You're no longer in the quiet library. You're standing beside the Nile, sandals half buried in the silt, as a small boat approaches. It's narrow, elegant, its paint chipped by time and sun. On board is a messenger, lanky, yawning, definitely underpaid. He carries a tiny bundle wrapped in linen and sealed with a blob of red wax. You know what it is before he even speaks. It's a reply. This letter comes from Kamudi, the young temple singer with hair so well oiled it could reflect moonlight. His handwriting is dramatic, excessive. Every other word ends in a flourish, as if he's trying to win a calligraphy contest, and Neferu's heart in the same breath. You say I did not look at you, the letter begins, but my eyes are not my own when you walk past. They belong to the gods, and they weep when I cannot stare too long. A little over the top, sure, but the man clearly feels things. He continues, your voice, like the strings of a harp, pulls at my bones. When you speak, I forget my prayers. A pause. Then, also, I did not take your comb. That was Teddy. He borrowed it to impress a girl from Memphis. There it is. Romance and petty theft. A tale as old as civilization. You chuckle to yourself. These weren't just poetic exchanges. They were tactical. Status, power, flirtation, all folded neatly into a few lines of hieratic script. It's no coincidence that some of these letters were preserved in tombs. Egyptians believed that love, like fine linen or spicy gossip, should accompany you into the afterlife. One particularly famous letter, now housed in a museum and guarded like it's made of gold, which it is not, though it should be, tells of Pharaoh Rameses II and his beloved wife Nefertari. In it, he calls her, she for whom the sun rises. Pretty smooth, right? Modern scholars agree it's one of the earliest known instances of royal romantic correspondence, though of course some historians argue the letter was dictated and not personal. Those scholars probably don't get invited to many parties. Back in your current memoryscape, you're walking through the gardens of a noblewoman named Bakit. She's known for throwing the best full-moon poetry salons in all of Wasset. You overhear her dictating a letter to her latest interest, a high-ranking army captain who smells suspiciously of onions. I dreamed of you last night, she says, though I woke before the part where you gave me the lapis ring. Next time, try harder. Savage. A breeze rolls through the garden, rustling reeds and fluttering scrolls drying on a line. Yes, people literally hang their love letters to dry. It's adorable and chaotic. One flutters down and hits you in the face. Classic. This one's unsigned but elegant. If I am a house, you are the key. If I am a jar, you are the seal. If I am a songbird, you are the breeze that lets me sing. You wonder if it worked. Did the breeze respond? Did the jar get sealed? Did the key ghost her? Curiously, it wasn't just nobles and royals who wrote like this. Love letters have been found from scribes, merchants, even tomb builders. And while men often leaned into metaphors about gods and beauty, women's letters, like Neferu's, were often direct, spicy, and unfiltered. One broken clay shard, likely written by a servant girl, reads, "You promised to visit. I waited all night. The lamp ran out. My patience did too. I am not a crocodile to sit still forever." Honestly, iconic. Your guide. Yes, you now have one. A small boy with giant ears and no shoes tugs your sleeve. He wants to show you the place where the best letters are kept. You follow him down an alley between two dusty brick houses, past a woman singing while grinding barley and a cat carrying something that better be a lizard. Eventually, you reach a humble doorway and duck inside. It's not what you expected. No scroll racks, no gold-trimmed shelves, just a room filled with sand-smoothed pottery shards, each scribbled with ink. Ostraca. These were the post-it notes of ancient Egypt. Cheap, common, easy to use, and many of them, incredibly, are love letters. The boy picks one up and reads it aloud in a squeaky voice, barely hiding his grin. To the boy with shoulders like temple columns, "I saw you during festival, dancing like Horus himself. Next time, save a date cake for me. He blushes and drops it like it's cursed. You pick it up. Yep, still warm with affection from 3,000 years ago. What makes all this so endlessly fascinating is how close it feels. Their gods had crocodile heads, sure. Their toothpaste was made from ashes and eggshells. And yes, they use crocodile dung as sunblock. But their emotions? Very familiar. Jealousy, longing, awkward compliments, weird dream confessions. It's all there. And despite what your high school textbook might have implied, ancient Egyptians were not all about death and pyramids. They lived, laughed, loved, and sometimes ghosted each other mid-festival. So next time you forget to text someone back, just remember, somewhere in Thebes, a guy named Teti is still pretending he didn't steal that comb. The afternoon heat presses down on you like a linen blanket fresh from the fire, and yet you walk. The little boy guide with the comically large ears has scampered off, possibly to chase a beetle or steal a honey cake, and you're left weaving through the sun-bleached streets of ancient Waset. The smell of warm bread, lotus perfume, and something suspiciously fishy fill your nose. It's oddly comforting. You pass a man painting hieroglyphs on a doorway while singing off-key. He pauses to wave, then returns to a lyric that seems to involve a monkey and a wine jar. You choose not to ask. Soon, you find yourself in a scribe's school, not because you were invited, but because the door was open, and curiosity is stronger than decorum. You slip inside. No one stops you. A handful of teenage scribes sit cross-legged with reed pens in hand, each scribbling furiously on shards of limestone. At the front, a stern instructor reads aloud a sample text, his voice dry as the desert wind. My heart leaps when you pass near. My chest is like a drumbeat, frantic and unending. He pauses, raises an eyebrow, and says, a bit dramatic, but correct in form. You settle near a window and listen. The lesson today? How to structure a love letter that impresses but doesn't embarrass. Apparently, this is a serious academic subject in the 18th dynasty. One boy whispers, I used heart like a crocodile's jaw, and she laughed. Another hisses back, that's because that's terrifying. You stifle a chuckle. Outside, two girls pass by holding hands, giggling over a shared scroll. One of them has henna on her fingertips and a smudge of ink on her cheek. The other reads aloud in a dramatic tone, if I cannot be the wine in your cup, then let me be the cup itself. She pauses. What does that even mean? The first girl shrugs. I think it means he wants to be close. Or maybe he's just thirsty. Ancient pickup lines were, as you're now learning, deeply poetic and occasionally desperate. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. Because while romantic love gets all the glory, hearts fluttering, letters exchanged, crocodiles blushing, Egyptians also wrote letters of longing to the dead. That's right. Sometimes love was not just for the living. You recall one such letter, now preserved in brittle parchment. A woman named Ankiri wrote to her deceased husband, I did not stray, I kept your shrine full, but the dreams you send are cold. Why do you not speak to me with kindness? It's heartbreaking. Historians still debate whether these letters were meant to be cathartic, magical, or simply therapeutic. Maybe all three. But one thing is clear. Love did not end at the tomb door. Egyptians were romantics, and a bit clingy. And here's your historical fun fact of the day. Egyptians believed the heart was the seat of emotion and thought, not the brain. In fact, during mummification, they threw the brain out through the nose like it was leftover hummus. But the heart? That stayed. It was weighed in the afterlife against the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth. Fail that test, and your soul was eaten by a monster named Ammit, who had the head of a crocodile, body of a lion, and butt of a hippopotamus. Probably not the worst Tinder date, but still. Back in the schoolroom, the instructor now lectures on metaphor technique. Don't compare your lover to the Nile unless you're prepared to explain the seasonal flooding, he says dryly. A scribe snorts. Another holds up his draft. Your lips are like lotus petals, soft and pink. The instructor nods. Acceptable. Just don't say fish-like. That's only romantic during Lent. What surprises you most is how democratic all of this feels. Love in ancient Egypt wasn't reserved for kings and queens alone. The same words that graced palace scrolls found their way into worker villages, temple walls, and kitchen tables. Sure, not everyone had the resources to craft papyrus letters laced with myrrh and gold dust, but even a pot shard, carefully inked, could carry a whole universe of emotion. Take Paneb, a foreman in the workers' village of Deir el-Medina, a man with, shall we say, a reputation. One letter attributed to him reads, "My wife is angered with me, though I swear I only visited Merritt's house to discuss taxes." Tell us another one, Paneb. The fact that his letter exists suggests he thought writing it might repair things, or at least buy him time before she threw his shoes in the Nile. You wander now into a temple courtyard, the sandstone warm beneath your feet. Here, carved between scenes of battle and tribute, are little graffitied hearts. Yes, literal hearts, scratched into the walls by board guards or love-struck acolytes. One reads, "Nile loves Becket, may Amun-Ra bless their union." Another simply says, "Hotep wa Hinot, I stood forever. Eternal love, brought to you by unauthorized vandalism." At this point, you're probably wondering how so many of these letters survived. Simple answer, Egypt is dry, really dry. Like, leave bread out and it becomes a weapon dry. The lack of moisture meant that ink, papyrus, and ostraca could lie buried in sand for thousands of years and still be readable. If only your old group texts were so lucky. And speaking of luck, you trip over a rock and land face first in the sand. You brush yourself off and realize it's not a rock, it's another ostracon. You wipe it clean. The writing is rushed, but legible. She dances like a flame in the wind. I cannot catch her, and yet I burn. You exhale. These people were too good at this. If you lived back then, you'd probably be the guy writing, "You're like bread. I want more of you daily." So, as the sun dips lower and the shadows grow long, you find yourself sitting beneath a fig tree, surrounded by scraps of history. Each one, a whisper from someone who once lived, once loved, once risked embarrassment for the sake of a smile. And somehow, they're still speaking. Evening settles across Wasset like a silk veil, and the heat finally lets go of your shoulders. You walk slowly now, the world tinted bronze and lavender by the setting sun, your path lit by flickering oil lamps placed outside small homes. From a distance, the Nile glimmers with soft ripples, the water reflecting the last blush of daylight. Somewhere, a flute plays a haunting tune, the kind that makes you nostalgic for things you've never actually lived. Welcome to Golden Hour, Egyptian edition. You duck into a quiet corner of the artisan quarter, where the houses are tight and the walls are covered in chipped plaster and faded murals of gods and hippos. Here, people aren't writing love letters for the palace. They're writing them because they're in love, or heartbroken, or just plain bored on a Wednesday. And you, ever the accidental time traveler, find a group of women seated on cushions, passing around a bowl of dates and reading letters aloud like it's ancient Egypt's version of a book club. One woman reads a line from a clay shard, her voice syrupy and amused. "If your eyes were arrows, I would gladly be the target." Another scoffs. "Typical. He probably says that to all the weavers." Laughter follows. Someone else chimes in. "Mine said he dreams of me every night, then forgot my name at the festival." Ouch. Even in the 13th century BCE, romance was risky business. Here's a weird little historical tidbit for you. Ancient Egyptians wore scented cones of wax on their heads during parties. The wax would slowly melt, releasing perfume over time. So yes, your romantic rival might literally drip frankincense while reciting love poetry. Talk about raising the bar. But amid the gossip and sass, one of the women pulls out a much older letter. She handles it with reverence. "This was my grandmother's," she says softly. "She wrote it to a soldier before he left for Nubia." The group falls silent as she reads, "Go with strength, but leave your heart here. I will guard it with my breath. If you do not return, I will walk the banks until I am dust." You blink. That line hits harder than expected. Not every love story in Egypt had a happy ending, and they knew it. With soldiers constantly sent to far-off campaigns and disease lurking like a particularly antisocial god, time was not on anyone's side. And yet, they still wrote, still loved, still risked their hearts on every line. You wander again, this time past a vendor selling lotus petals and talismans carved from bone. He offers you one shaped like a tiny heart. "For good luck," he says, "or bad decisions." You're not sure which it will bring, but you pocket it anyway. Your next stop? A noble estate at the edge of the city, because apparently, rich people's drama is a universal constant. The house is sprawling, high walls, shaded courtyards, a private pond with suspiciously spoiled fish. Inside, a young noblewoman sits by a balcony, clutching a scroll so tightly it might crumble. She's mid-rant, complaining to her servant. He sent me poetry. Again, comparing me to a date cake. I'm not even that sweet. Her servant, trying not to laugh, responds, well, you are sticky when angry. The scroll in question lies open. My princess, your walk is like the moon crossing the sky, and your voice makes the herons hush in awe. Not bad, honestly, but you can tell she's unimpressed. Do you think he means it? She asks quietly. Her tone shifts, softer now, less theatrical. Or is he just trying to get invited to my estate dinner? That right there? Universal fear. Number 1. Are you loved for who you are or for what you have? The Egyptians had a word for true love, myrrh, and while romantic gestures were everywhere, true merit was rare. Marriage, especially among the elite, was often arranged for property, lineage, or politics. But even then, some letters break the mold. A famous one from a high-ranking priest reads, I chose you before the gods knew my name. If I were a poor man, I would still carry your sandals across the dust. Historians still debate whether this was a genuine statement or an extremely elaborate pickup line. Here's another academic debate to keep you up at night. Did women write as many love letters as men, or were theirs simply not preserved? The majority of surviving letters are from male authors, but that might just reflect who had access to writing materials. The truth, lost in the sandstorms of history. But based on tonight's impromptu book club and noblewoman meltdown, you're guessing the women of Egypt held pens and grudges with equal skill. You rest now under a canopy of vines in the courtyard. The stars are just beginning to appear, soft freckles on the velvet sky. A servant lights a small brazier beside you, the smoke rising in lazy spirals scented with cedar. And for a moment, you imagine yourself back in your own time, clutching a phone at 2 a.m., staring at a message that just says, you up. See? Some things never change. Suddenly, a whisper reaches your ear. He wrote again. The noblewoman murmurs, more to herself than anyone else. He said, if I am ever lonely, I can read his words and feel his arms. She bites her lip. Why does that make me angrier? Probably because love, when it's uncertain, is the most infuriating kind. As you stand to leave, you pass a hallway lined with portraits, not painted, but carved in relief. One shows a couple seated together on a bench, hands gently touching. Their names, long worn away, are less important than the image. Not a pharaoh and his queen, but simply two people choosing to face eternity side by side. It's a good reminder that love in ancient Egypt wasn't just about gold trinkets and gods of fertility. It was also in the quiet things, a shared pomegranate, a letter under a pillow, a vow that didn't need to be spoken out loud. You step outside, and the night wraps around you like a cloak. Somewhere a dog barks. Somewhere else, two voices laugh in the dark. You exhale. If hearts could leave echoes, this city would still be humming with them. By now you've walked through candlelit alleys, eavesdropped on heartbreaks both poetic and petty, and pocketed a questionable talisman. But as the night deepens and the stars press closer, you're guided by a hushed urgency, the kind that suggests something is waiting to be discovered. You find yourself at the edge of the Temple of Hathor, goddess of music, fertility, and, most importantly for tonight, love. Her walls are covered in carved prayers and wine-soaked memories, and you can almost hear them sigh. Inside, it's cool and still. Incense curls in the air like ancient cursive, carrying the scent of myrrh and a hint of burned figs. A scribe stands hunched over a stone table, his reed pen dipping into a shallow dish of black ink. His hands are stained with it, proof of a long night translating and copying what he refers to, reverently, as the love hymns of the two lands. His task? Preserving the romantic correspondences of those long gone, including the personal letters of pharaohs. Though, judging by the eye roll he gives one scroll, even royalty wasn't immune to a touch of melodrama. One of these letters? It's from Pharaoh Ramses II. And yes, the guy who built giant temples and had more kids than a royal family WhatsApp group. But here, he's not the conqueror of Kadesh. He's a man writing to Nefertari, his favorite queen. The letter reads, "You are the light of Ra at dawn. When I march to war, it is your name I carry on my tongue." Romantic, right? Until you realize that march to war likely meant months of sand, arrows, and regrettable diet choices. Still, the dude wrote her poetry and even carved her image into his temples. Twice. That's more than a text with a heart emoji. Historians love to debate whether Ramses' feelings were genuine or just very clever PR. After all, pharaohs were part god, part politician. But honestly, the emotion in those words feels too specific to be just statecraft. When you breathe, I am strong. When you laugh, I forget my crown. That's not exactly a campaign slogan. You move through the temple, where the walls hold traces of thousands of whispered prayers and desperate bargains. Couples once came here to ask Hathor for fertility, for passion, for a sign. Some brought offerings, wine, honey, sometimes an animal shaped out of clay. Others just wrote their wishes on papyrus and left them beneath the goddess's gaze, hoping she'd bless them with the kind of love that didn't end in sandstorms or betrayal. And here's the part no one tells you in history class. Hathor's temples weren't just places of worship. They were destinations. People partied here. There were music festivals, dance rituals, and possibly the world's earliest It's Complicated situations. Picture it. A courtyard full of linen robes, harp players, and people trying to flirt while pretending it's all deeply spiritual. You stop by one of the prayer walls and spot a faint line of hieratic script. The translation? May he return before the pomegranates rot. You laugh softly. That's either very sweet or very petty, depending on how long those pomegranates take to expire. Nearby, a priestess lights a new brazier, casting flickering shadows across the floor. She catches your eye and nods toward a sealed chamber in the back. Only the most sacred letters were kept there, she whispers. Some say they still carry the breath of their authors. Okay, a little spooky, but you're intrigued. Inside, the air is heavy with centuries. Shelves line the walls, filled with scrolls wrapped in faded silk. A few are open, displayed beneath glass. One in particular draws you in. It's older than the rest. The ink has bled slightly into the papyrus, and the handwriting is unusually delicate. It's a farewell letter, written by a woman to a scribe who was leaving for Thebes. If the stars forget their path, I will still remember yours, she wrote. I will read the words you left me until they are my own thoughts. Goosebumps. Actual goosebumps. You can feel the depth of longing in those lines, like emotional archaeology. And the kicker? The letter wasn't even addressed. No name, no signature. Just the raw echo of someone left behind. Fun fact, ancient Egyptian letters often started with formulaic greetings, kind of like the "hey, hope you're well" of their time. But the really juicy stuff came after that. And they didn't just write about love. They asked for advice, confessed to bad behavior, even begged for forgiveness. One letter from a woman to her husband reads, "If I have angered you, let my tears be payment." Dang. Someone get that woman a chocolate offering. You sit on the stone floor, back resting against the wall, and close your eyes. The cool air carries soft echoes, footsteps, laughter, maybe even a verse of a hymn, or maybe it's just your mind filling in the gaps. You think about the people who wrote these letters, how they bled their hearts onto fragile sheets of papyrus, never knowing if the message would arrive, never knowing if they'd see the other person again. And still, they wrote. Because hope, apparently, survives even a 3-week camel trip through the desert. Then, somewhere in the temple, a cat meows, loudly. You open one eye to see a very unimpressed feline weaving through the pillars like she owns the place, which, considering Egyptian culture, she probably does. Cats were sacred here, symbols of protection and grace. Also, excellent judges of character. She stares at you like she's deciding whether you're worthy of ancient secrets. After a pause, she curls up beside you, tail flicking lazily. Congratulations, you've been accepted by a temple cat. That's basically sainthood in this timeline. You linger a bit longer, watching the shadows shift across the carvings, and you wonder how many stories have been lost to time, how many letters never got answers, how many hearts waited, and then stopped. But also, how many were read, held, cried over, kissed, and folded neatly into someone's most private memory. Outside, Dawn is thinking about waking up, but the temple still hums with ancient emotion. You rise slowly, leaving the sealed chamber behind, and step back into the warm arms of the night. You step back into the temple courtyard, and for a second, it feels like nothing has changed. But something's different, subtler than scent, quieter than breath. Maybe it's the way the sky seems darker now, like it's holding its breath. Or maybe it's you. You've been soaked in the thoughts of people who've been dead for thousands of years, and yet, somehow they're still whispering. The cat has vanished, of course. Typical. but the path forward is clear. A low archway in the sandstone wall, half covered in flowering vines, and probably the ancient equivalent of "do not enter," calls to you. Naturally, you ignore that and slip through. You're not just here for the vibes anymore. You're chasing something, a legend, a story buried not just under sand, but beneath centuries of bureaucratic shuffling, lost translations, and dramatic royal edits. The secret love affair of Pharaoh Akhenaten and his unnamed muse. Now, you've probably heard of Akhenaten. He's the pharaoh who decided to cancel Egypt's entire religious system like a bad TV spin-off. Instead of worshipping a pantheon of gods, he narrowed everything down to one: the Aten, the sun disk. Bold move, and deeply unpopular. Historians still debate if he was a religious visionary, a megalomaniac, or just really bad at politics. But buried beneath the sun hymns and awkward art is something stranger. A collection of letters written in a softer hand. Not official decrees, not hymns, letters, personal, secretive, emotional, and none of them addressed to Nefertiti, his famously beautiful wife. Awkward. These notes are unsigned but always begin with a phrase, "To the one whose name I dare not say." Dramatic much? And yet, beautiful. One scroll reads, "You are my shade when the Aten burns too bright. When the priests curse me, I hear your voice like cool water." Another says simply, "You remind me of the world before I became a god." If that doesn't hit you right in the existential crisis, nothing will. Of course, some scholars think these are forgeries. Later editions, they say, likely written by over-enthusiastic scribes with too much ink and not enough dating prospects. But others argue that they're real, citing the handwriting and unique linguistic patterns. One academic even went as far as to say, the emotional density is too authentic to be fiction, which, if you ask me, is just a fancy way of saying, this guy was down bad. You brush aside a curtain of dried papyrus strips, ducking into what feels like an abandoned records room. It smells like cinnamon, old paper, and the kind of dust that sticks to your soul. On the wall, there's a map etched in faded ochre, showing the layout of Amarna, Akhenaten's capital city. Unlike Thebes or Memphis, this place didn't last, built quickly and abandoned even faster, as if Egypt itself wanted to forget it ever existed. The kind of ex that deletes your photos the second you break up. But here, in this forgotten chamber, someone remembered. Tucked into a stone drawer is a box, simple, rectangular, wrapped in worn leather. Inside, a scroll, one, still sealed. The wax bears the mark of Akhenaten's ring, the real deal. You don't open it. I mean, it would probably disintegrate in your hands, but a translation has been etched into the inner lid, and it reads, "If I vanish, as they hope I will, let this remain. A proof that I loved not as a god, but as a man." Chills. Literal, actual chills. You sit down, or more accurately, collapse slowly like a folding chair, and just stare at the scroll. There's a quiet power in that confession. Because pharaohs weren't supposed to write like this. They were meant to command, declare, conquer. But here's one who just wanted to love someone and leave behind a memory. And now, you're holding it. Well, metaphorically. The thing is very much sealed and probably guarded by 10 layers of curses, some snakes, and at least one annoyed museum curator's ghost. But spiritually, you're cradling the emotional core of a man whose very reign was erased from most monuments. And yet, he's still here, still whispering through time. You lean back against the wall and think about the risk that letter represents. If discovered, it could have meant exile, or worse, erasure. And for someone like Akhenaten, whose entire existence was basically an episode of ancient pharaohs canceled and forgotten, that's saying something. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yes, this room also has a cat. Different one. Looks slightly more judgmental, possibly immortal. You stand, brushing dust off your legs, and head toward a narrow exit passage that curves like a spine. You pass small alcoves with more scrolls, statues, and something that looks suspiciously like a petrified fig tart. You don't ask questions. As you emerge, the night air wraps around you like a familiar blanket. The moon is high now, casting silver across the sand, and the city breathes slow and deep. You pause on a stone bench, the kind carved just for decoration but unreasonably comfortable. Above you, the constellations shimmer, the same ones Akhenaten looked at when he wrote those forbidden letters. You wonder who his muse was, a servant, A foreign diplomat? Maybe even a priestess who dared to see the God King as just a man? We'll never know. And maybe that's okay. Some stories aren't meant to be solved, just felt. You pull your own blanket a little tighter around your shoulders, not out of cold, but comfort. Somewhere nearby, a lute plays softly. Maybe it's a ghost. Maybe it's just someone who's very into vintage music. Either way, it fits. The stars flicker. The scrolls rest. And you're somewhere between now and then, wrapped in secrets, shadows, and the kind of story that lingers long after it ends. You wake, or maybe you never slept. It's hard to tell in this half-dream of a night. The stone bench beneath you has warmed from your body, and the breeze carries whispers in a language you almost understand. It feels like Egypt herself is speaking, not the Egypt of travel brochures or dry museum plaques, but the Egypt that breathes under your skin, the Egypt that keeps secrets. The next stretch of your journey takes you through a narrow passageway that zigzags like a snake avoiding eye contact. The walls are covered in faded etchings, scenes of daily life that most people skip in favor of the flashy tomb stuff. But you stop. Because here, tucked between a carving of a baker slapping dough and a woman chasing a goose, is something rare. A young man, head bowed, handing a folded piece of linen to a veiled figure. The linen is clearly a letter. You can almost hear him stammering as he offers it. She reaches out, hand trembling just slightly, just enough to break your heart in real time. The artist didn't bother labeling them. No pharaohs here, just people. And maybe that's the point. You continue into a chamber with high ceilings and the kind of echo that turns your cough into a Gregorian chant. In the center sits a long, slanted table made of dark cedar. Laid across it, fragments of letters. Real ones. Some half-burned, others damaged by age or, more likely, drama. Ancient Egyptian love letters weren't always romantic. Some read like bad breakup texts. One, dated roughly 1300 BCE, begins with, "You have not written. Have you forgotten me? My heart is as a dried lotus." Oof. But then there are the gems. Letters so soft they could melt sandstone. One fragment, unsigned, reads, "You came to me last night in dream. I touched your cheek, but the wind woke me before your lips." You try not to sigh dramatically. You fail. And these weren't just for the romantics. Some letters were sent as proposals, a way of testing interest without risking face. Others were written by wives to husbands stationed far away on military campaigns. There's one from a woman to her soldier husband that includes a shopping list, a mild complaint about his mother, and then, "I miss your hands, though you never folded the laundry." A queen. Here's your fun fact. The Egyptians believed writing a feeling gave it power. Words weren't just representations of emotion. They were emotion, which makes love letters kind of like magical spells. Write, "I miss you," and somewhere, the Nile might stir. Say, "I love you," and maybe the ibis flies closer. Curiously, historians still debate whether some of these letters were written sincerely or as part of ritual practice. Were they personal, or offerings to Hathor, goddess of love? Did a heartbroken teen write that letter to their crush, or was it a kind of sacred poetry whispered into temple walls? We may never know, but doesn't that mystery make it even more delicious? As you sift through translations etched onto obsidian plaques, you start to notice a pattern. Certain phrases repeat across time and class. Rich or poor, royal or servant, many letters use the same opening. "I write with a heart heavier than sand," and the same closing. "Return to me if the gods are kind." It's the ancient version of, "Text me back, okay?" You turn a corner and nearly trip over a pile of papyrus rolls stacked like Jenga. Each roll has been numbered, sorted, and annotated in a script that's so neat, it must have belonged to someone deeply annoying in group projects. One particular scroll catches your eye. It's thinner, lighter, but wrapped in deep red twine. You unravel it carefully, half expecting it to self-destruct or summon a crocodile. Inside, the ink dances. The words are soft, curved, more like song lyrics than statements. It reads, "When I look at you, I forget the sun has gods. I forget the laws and the priests and the sharp gold of the crown. I remember only how your eyes mock the river and won." And then, in a tiny, crooked hand at the bottom, "Please do not show this to the vizier." You laugh, quietly, probably the first person to do so in this room for centuries. And in that moment, you feel like a time traveler, not the kind who jumps through wormholes, but one who slips gently through layers, listening instead of interfering. You carry that feeling with you as you pass through a hall lined with jars. Not the canopic kind. These are message jars. Yes, that's a thing. Egyptians sometimes wrote short notes and sealed them in ceramic jars, to be placed near shrines or carried across long distances. Think of it as ancient WhatsApp, but with more pottery-related injuries. Some of the jars have been cracked open, their contents on display. One letter to a woman named Nofret reads, "You said your love would last beyond the inundation. The Nile has flooded 3 times. Where are you?" Another is simply, "I planted your favorite tree. It died. It misses you." And just when you think you can't handle any more poetic pain, a jar tips over. Not on its own. No ghostly forces. Just your elbow being clumsy again. Inside is a scroll barely thicker than a receipt. It reads, "You promised to write. I'm still waiting. I told the cat about you. He isn't impressed." You stare at it for a long moment. You and the ancient Egyptians, you'd get along fine. With that, you leave the chamber. It's late now, or early, depending on how time works when you're suspended between centuries. The air is cooler, brushing against your skin like silk soaked in secrets. You walk through rows of columns painted with faded blue lotuses. Above you, a skylight reveals the stars, not twinkling, but pulsing softly, as if listening. You wonder how many people stood here and dreamed of someone far away, of someone they couldn't name, or shouldn't name, or loved in defiance of temples, tradition, and titles. The answer, of course, is too many to count, but tonight, you count them anyway, one heartbeat at a time. You sit for a moment beneath the open ceiling, letting the stars gaze back at you. It's strange how they look the same now as they did 3,000 years ago, yet everyone under them thought their love story was the only one that mattered. Maybe that's what makes it all feel so intimate. You're surrounded by the ghosts of people who thought they were the first to feel a flutter in the chest. Spoiler alert, they weren't. You move again, this time into what seems like a smaller, more personal archive. The air shifts as you cross the threshold. Less ceremonial, more human. Like stepping into someone's attic after they've been gone for years, but everything's still exactly where they left it. The walls here are covered in painted linen, some hung like tapestries, others nailed crudely into place. They bear fragments of letters not from kings or priests, but from scribes, servants, and most notably, royal concubines. Now, don't let the word concubine fool you. These women weren't just palace ornaments. Many held immense political influence. Some were trained musicians, poets, and diplomats, and apparently, master-level letter writers. One piece catches your attention, written in ochre ink, delicately curved script, addressed to someone named Tefnacht. It begins, "If you do not arrive before the next moon, I will feed your sandals to the ibis." You instantly like her. Her letter is long, looping with emotions that swing from longing to outrage to back again. A classic. She accuses him of forgetting her, praises the scent of his shoulder, specific, and closes with, "When I next see you, I shall kiss you or curse you." Perhaps both. Talk about emotional range. Somewhere in the margins, a scribe has scrawled, "Read aloud at court, caused laughter." You don't doubt it. Among these personal letters, there's an odd object, a tiny wooden box shaped like a heart. Okay, technically it's more of a lopsided triangle, but the intent is clear. Inside is a folded note, likely never meant to be opened. But here you are. The ink is faint, but legible, reading, "To speak of you would make me mortal again." Woof, that's a line worthy of a tattoo, or at least a highly dramatic Instagram post. As you lean against a carved pillar, catching your breath from the emotional roller coaster, a soft rustling draws your attention. No, not ghosts, just a papyrus fan catching the breeze. But still, you half expect a pharaoh to lean out from behind a curtain and offer unsolicited relationship advice. Instead, you find something even better, a table of rejection letters. Yes, ancient Egyptian ghosting was real. One particularly brutal message. "Your offering was generous, but I cannot love a man who walks like a hippo." That's not metaphor. The man probably just had a clunky stride. Another gem? "My heart does not stir for your beard," which is patchy, savage. You're starting to think the past wasn't all incense and moonlight. There were definitely awkward first dates, and definitely a lot of unanswered papyrus. Let's throw in a historical tidbit to ground all this romance, shall we? It was during the 18th dynasty, around the time of Amenhotep III, that literacy rates among the elite exploded. which meant more people writing letters, more people pouring their hearts into ink, more drama. And while many letters were dictated to scribes, love notes, often handwritten, because no one wants a third party correcting your spelling when you're trying to sound passionate. And here's your odd little fact for the night. Egyptians sometimes perfumed their letters, like literally soaked them in fragrance oils. Imagine opening a letter and getting hit with a puff of lotus blossom or myrrh. Scented secrets. Makes your high school Valentine cards look basic, doesn't it? But historians still debate whether certain symbols in these letters were personal shorthand or part of a now-lost love language. For instance, some letters include drawings of birds, snakes, or eyes, but they don't seem to serve a clear grammatical purpose. Were they metaphors? Inside jokes? Hidden meanings? No one knows. But wouldn't it be wild if a little falcon doodle actually meant thinking about you in the bath? You move deeper into the archive, where the light dims and the air feels heavier. The letters here are older, fragile. Some are no more than charcoal lines on limestone shards. But somehow their voices are louder. One shard reads, "The day I saw you, my pulse outran the Nile." Another says simply, "You smiled. I died. I write now from the afterlife." The dramatic flair is impressive and weirdly relatable. You can practically hear the narrator of some ancient TikTok reciting it over sad harp music. Just when you think you've read it all, you stumble upon a slab of painted wood with a carved envelope motif, not functional, but symbolic. It was found in a tomb, left beside a woman's body. The inscription reads, "In death, I send my words through silence. In silence, may you find them." It's unclear if it's from her to someone else, or from someone to her. Either way, it hits like a brick to the soul. You linger a while longer in this chamber. There's no rush. The fan continues its slow whisper overhead. The letters around you seem to lean in, waiting to be heard again. You wonder how many of these words were never answered. How many were reread by candlelight, lips mouthing each line in quiet prayer, and how many were folded and kept in linen pockets, close to the skin, where even time couldn't erase them. As you leave the room, a thought stays with you, that maybe the Egyptians weren't obsessed with love. Maybe they just understood that love, when written, never really dies. It gets stored, passed on, whispered, and one night, in a temple or a dream, someone reads it again. Tonight, that someone is you. You keep moving through the cool corridors, letting the faint scent of lotus and myrrh guide you deeper into the world of ancient affection. Here, the letters shift from poetic outbursts to practical expressions of daily longing. You find notes scribbled on ostraca, broken pottery shards used as scrap paper, where scribes and lesser nobles jotted quick messages between errands or palace duties. It's like stumbling across someone's ancient text messages, except with a lot more elegance and a surprising lack of emojis. One ostracon reads, "Meet me by the Nile bend at dusk. Bring figs and patience." Another, slightly smudged, says, "If you forget the bread, I will send the dogs after you." You can almost hear the playfulness in the words, like a slow game of romantic tag across the scorching Egyptian sun. This is where the human side of the Pharaoh's world really seeps through the cracks of history. You start to see that while the kings might have sent grand proclamations, the smaller notes carry the pulse of everyday life, the teasing, the worry, the impatience, and the hope that today might finally be the day you catch a glimpse of your beloved, or at least their shadow on the palace wall. Remember that bit about perfume? Turns out some letters had secret compartments where small sachets of fragrant herbs were tucked inside, almost like the ancient version of a scratch and sniff. You might be imagining opening a papyrus and suddenly smelling jasmine or sandalwood wafting through your room. Yes, the Egyptians knew their sensory marketing. Very 3000 BCE influencer vibes. Historians still debate whether the scent was meant purely as a romantic gesture, or if it also had a superstitious purpose, like warding off evil spirits from the letter's message or ensuring the words reached their recipient untouched by bad luck. Imagine waiting for your love note and crossing your fingers that no curses were attached to it. Talk about delivery anxiety. Now, let's talk about those grand romantic gestures because, surprise, not all letters were just written words. Some came with gifts, a lotus flower preserved in resin, a finely carved amulet, or even a lock of hair carefully wrapped in papyrus. These tokens were symbols of fidelity and longing, tangible proof of affection, when distance made physical meetings rare. You can almost picture a young noblewoman holding a tiny golden ring that her beloved inscribed with a phrase like, eternally yours, carved in hieroglyphs so delicate you'd need a magnifying glass to read it. Or the pharaoh himself, sending a symbolic gift wrapped in linen to the queen, reminding her that even the mightiest ruler felt the sting of absence. Here's an academic debate to lull your mind. Some Egyptologists argue that the love tokens weren't always romantic, but sometimes diplomatic. Gifts sent between royal couples from different kingdoms, intended to cement alliances under the guise of affection. So, were some of these letters heartfelt declarations, or just political chess moves? You decide. One letter to note comes from a mysterious figure named Nefru, whose words are equal parts poetry and intrigue. My heart, a papyrus reed, bends but does not break under your absence. You probably wouldn't text that, but it sure sounds poetic at 2 a.m. while lying awake. The letters don't all portray idealized love either. You find complaints about jealousy, accusations of neglect, and even pleas for forgiveness. One especially relatable piece complains about the beloved's tendency to get lost in ritual feasts and court gossip. Sound familiar? You're not the first to get ignored at dinner parties. A side note, did you know that some of these letters include detailed descriptions of personal grooming? One wife writes about missing her husband's bare feet on cool stone, and how she started using a paste made from crushed almonds to soften her hands for his return. You probably don't want to try that almond paste at home, but it's a sweet image nonetheless. As you leaf through these intimate pages, you start to feel like a silent observer at the most private moments of a civilization long gone, moments that might mirror your own fears, hopes, and quirky habits more than you'd expect. Tonight, the distance between you and those ancient lovers collapses under the weight of their words. Their hopes, their frustrations, their longing become yours, part of a human story that transcends time and tombs. You adjust your position, ready for the next chapter in this journey of love, letters lost and found. You settle into a quieter rhythm as the letters now turn toward the theme of separation and reunion, a story as old as time, but told here with the layered nuances of ancient Egyptian life. Imagine the pharaoh, away on campaigns or religious pilgrimages, sending missives not just filled with longing, but practical advice. One letter instructs the queen on how to host a festival in his absence, complete with detailed lists of offerings and prayers to appease specific gods. You feel the weight of responsibility these relationships bore, not just emotional but political, where love and duty blended in an intricate dance. Among these letters, you encounter one where a husband jokes about the endless sandstorms of bureaucracy he faces away from home, a phrase so vivid, you almost feel the gritty wind in your eyes. It's fascinating how humor sneaks into these texts, softening the loneliness and bringing a sense of lightness to the heavy burdens of royal life. You're probably grateful you don't have to deal with sand in your inbox. You remember the peculiar use of color in these letters. Bright red ink, made from crushed ochre, was reserved for words of great passion or anger, a technique that hints at the writer's mood before you even read a single line. It's like the ancient Egyptian version of texting in all caps, but with a whole lot more style. Historians still discuss whether this was a widely understood code, or something reserved for the elite few who could afford such luxury in ink. Another fascinating aspect is the physical form of these letters. Unlike the neatly folded envelopes of today, Egyptian letters were often rolled or folded into small bundles, sealed with clay stamps bearing the sender's personal emblem. You can almost hear the satisfying crackle as the recipient broke the seal, a moment charged with anticipation and curiosity. It's a sensory detail that connects you directly to the past, reminding you that anticipation in love is timeless. You also stumble upon the curious fact that some letters contained warnings disguised as affectionate remarks. For example, one missive includes a gentle admonishment to avoid a certain courtier whose charm was deemed dangerous, cloaked in the language of concern and subtle metaphor. You imagine the delicate balancing act of expressing suspicion without causing offense, a diplomatic tightrope walked with poetic finesse. Humor appears again when you read about a letter describing a royal pet, a mischievous mongoose named Seti who supposedly stole the queen's favorite hairpin. The writer complains with mock exasperation, saying, "Seti's thievery is worse than the desert winds, relentless and impossible to catch." It's a rare glimpse of personal life that adds a playful touch to the otherwise formal tone of the correspondence. Remember the earlier mention of perfume sachets? Here you find letters hinting that the scent could signal the sender's location or emotional state. A particular letter is said to carry the fragrance of blue lotus, associated with calm and tranquility. perhaps meant to soothe the recipient's anxieties during the pharaoh's absence. You might think about the subtle messages you send today through emojis or playlist shares. Ancient love letters had their own fragrant code. Then, there's the ongoing debate among scholars about whether these letters were always written by the pharaohs themselves, or if scribes did most of the writing, adding a layer of performative diplomacy to the love notes. You can't help but smile imagining a scribe with a cup of coffee, well, maybe beer, trying to capture the king's romantic voice without sounding too stiff or overly poetic. You sense how these letters blend the personal with the political, the intimate with the ceremonial, a reminder that even the greatest leaders were, at their core, human beings navigating love, distance, and the demands of their time. As you read the final lines of this section, you feel a soothing connection with those ancient lovers, their voices echoing softly through millennia, inviting you to lean back, relax, and drift further into their world. You ease into the next chapter of these ancient correspondences, where the pharaoh's letters reveal the delicate dance of jealousy and reassurance that love demands across the miles. You can almost hear the gentle tone as the king writes to his queen, playfully warning her about the flattery of certain courtiers, while assuring her of his unwavering affection. It's like a royal version of a "trust me, I'm watching" text, but wrapped in poetic language and scented with myrrh. One letter even compares the queen's beauty to the lotus blooming at dawn, a classic metaphor that you recognize but now feel deeply tied to this personal exchange. The pharaoh's words evoke not just admiration, but an intimate presence, as if he's sitting beside her under the stars of the Nile. You imagine the soft rustle of papyrus as the queen reads these lines, a mix of longing and quiet comfort washing over her. A curious detail pops up. Some letters were accompanied by small tokens, a bead from a necklace, a pressed flower, or a lock of hair. These tangible fragments of affection added a layer of reality to the words, something you can hold on to even when the sender is far away. It's a reminder that even thousands of years ago, people sought physical reminders to feel connected. You also find a slightly odd, almost humorous note about the pharaoh's frustration with his royal sandals, which kept falling apart during a desert march. It's a funny, humanizing moment tucked into the love letters, showing that even rulers had their everyday annoyances. You might chuckle imagining him grumbling over footwear while trying to compose romantic verses. Historians still debate whether these letters reflect actual personal feelings, or were carefully crafted performances meant to maintain the image of a devoted ruler. This ambiguity adds to the mystery, leaving you wondering just how much of the warmth in these words was genuine emotion, and how much was duty cloaked in affection. Then, you notice how the letters subtly hint at rituals the queen should perform to keep the gods favorably disposed toward the pharaoh's campaigns. These instructions mix spiritual care with emotional concern, showing how intertwined religion and love were in the Egyptian psyche. You can almost picture the queen lighting incense as she reads, her heart both heavy with separation and buoyed by hope. A surprising tidbit reveals that some letters used a special form of calligraphy reserved for sacred texts, emphasizing the divine aspect of the couple's bond. It's as if love itself was a holy act, scripted with reverence and care. This artistic touch adds an almost cinematic layer to the scene, inviting you to visualize the careful strokes of ink on papyrus. In another letter, the pharaoh teases the queen about her fondness for exotic foods brought from Nubia, joking that she might soon turn into a walking spice market. This lighthearted teasing injects warmth and personality into the correspondence, making the distant monarch feel like someone you could share a laugh with over dinner. You recall the protective sunscreen made from crocodile dung, a quirky fact that fits perfectly into this world of intimate details and unexpected realities. The pharaoh might have written about his experiences with such remedies, mixing the practical with the personal in a way that feels surprisingly relatable. Finally, as you finish this section, you feel the weight of centuries lift slightly, replaced by a sense of closeness that defies time. These letters, fragile as papyrus, carry the whispers of love and longing that connect you to a distant past, inviting you to relax deeper into this ancient embrace. You slide gently into the next set of letters, where the pharaoh's tone grows more reflective, revealing the loneliness that comes with power and distance. You sense the quiet moments between campaigns, when the glittering halls feel emptier, and the weight of the crown presses heavier on his shoulders. It's like hearing a whisper through the desert winds, a vulnerability wrapped in regal phrasing that catches you off guard. The letters describe scenes of moonlit nights by the Nile, where the pharaoh imagines the queen gazing at the same stars, bridging the physical gap between them. You almost feel the cool breeze that rustles the papyrus reeds, carrying silent prayers and promises. It's a calm moment amid the chaos of empire building, a breath of stillness that invites you to lean back and breathe. One particularly endearing letter includes a playful complaint about the scribes who insist on formalities, making it difficult for him to express his true feelings. You might picture the pharaoh rolling his eyes as he dictates words to an overly meticulous scribe. Couldn't you just write, "I miss you?" injecting a bit of modern frustration into ancient protocol. A quirky curiosity stands out. In some letters, the pharaoh references a rare perfume made from lotus blossoms and honey, rumored to calm the mind and ease sleepless nights. You imagine the queen delicately applying it before bed, the scent lingering like a gentle caress, a sensory bridge between their worlds. The idea of a royal aromatherapy feels oddly soothing as you listen. Historians still debate whether the intimate details in these letters were genuine or carefully crafted for political messaging. The line between personal affection and public duty blurs here, adding a layer of mystery to the text. It's as if every word is a dance on a tightrope between love and image. The letters also mention rituals performed by the queen to honor Hathor, goddess of love and music, hoping these would safeguard the pharaoh's well-being. You picture the queen's hands gently strumming a harp, the melodies drifting through the palace halls, blending devotion with artistry. It's a reminder of how deeply spirituality was woven into their emotional lives. A lighthearted moment arises when the pharaoh jokes about trying to master a traditional dance to surprise the queen, but failing spectacularly. You can almost see him tripping over his royal robes, laughter echoing softly in the grand chambers. It's a charming glimpse of the human behind the legend, a reminder that even kings stumble. Remember the protective crocodile dung sunscreen? You might smile thinking the pharaoh probably needed it more during those dance practice sessions. The image is both amusing and oddly endearing. The section closes with a reflection on the power of written words to carry love across vast distances, even when voices cannot. You feel a quiet comfort in knowing that centuries later, these fragile letters still speak, inviting you to settle in and drift along with their timeless rhythms. You enter the next sequence of letters, now rich with the pharaoh's musings on legacy and memory. There's a tender urgency in his words, as if he's aware that time may not be on their side. The letters reveal not just affection, but a desire to be remembered, together, beyond the sands of Egypt, beyond the shifting Nile currents. It's as if he's scripting an eternal love story to outlast even the pyramids. The imagery in these letters is vivid, filled with metaphors comparing their love to the eternal sun, God Ra's daily journey across the sky. You almost feel the warmth of dawn breaking over the desert, the golden light touching the stones, and the promise of a new day. This natural cycle mirrors the steady, enduring pulse of their bond, inviting you to sink deeper into the moment. One letter recounts a peculiar royal tradition, the exchange of miniature statues depicting the beloved spirit animal meant to protect and guide them. You can picture the queen holding a tiny falcon carved from alabaster, feeling connected across distance and danger. This tangible symbol adds a layer of intimacy and mystery to their relationship, like a secret shared between two hearts. Historians still discuss whether these tokens were common among royal couples or exclusive to pharaohs and queens. This debate adds a fascinating tension to the narrative, like a whisper that invites you to imagine hidden court intrigues and rituals. The pharaoh also writes with a light tone about the challenges of keeping his royal beard perfectly styled during campaigns, fearing it might lose its majestic flow. It's a humorous, relatable detail that breaks the solemnity, as if the mighty ruler worries about bad hair days much like anyone else. You remember the lotus perfume from earlier, and now, the pharaoh mentions it again, hinting that the queen's scent lingers on his garments, comforting him during long journeys. This sensory connection feels almost cinematic, painting a picture of longing and tenderness that transcends time. In another letter, the pharaoh gently chides the queen for her tendency to stay up late organizing palace affairs, urging her to rest and dream of him instead. The advice feels timeless, like a caring reminder from someone who knows the exhaustion that comes with responsibility. A curious historical note emerges. Some letters were sealed with fragrant oils believed to ward off evil spirits and bad dreams. You can almost smell the subtle blend of jasmine and myrrh, wrapping the message in a protective embrace. It's a delicate ritual that adds an enchanting layer to the act of sending love across miles. The section ends with a soothing thought. Despite the centuries, These letters carry the same hopes and fears you might feel when missing someone dear. They invite you to relax and connect with a timeless human experience, easing you closer to restful calm. You find yourself drawn into the final batch of letters, where the pharaoh's voice softens, revealing a quieter, more contemplative side. These words feel like whispered secrets shared under a starlit sky, a contrast to the earlier grand declarations. It's as if the grandeur of the palace fades away, leaving only two souls navigating the delicate dance of love and distance. In these letters, you're transported to the intimate moments after a long day, perhaps the pharaoh reclining on a woven mat, the scent of incense curling through the warm air, and the distant call of nightbirds. The descriptions create a sensory cocoon, wrapping you in the soft textures of Egyptian life and the delicate balance between duty and desire. One letter mentions an obscure ritual where the pharaoh and queen would exchange locks of hair, believed to bind their spirits together even when apart. You imagine the careful, almost shy exchange, a tender act that feels deeply personal amid the formality of royal life. It's a beautiful reminder that even kings and queens sought simple, human connections. Historians still wonder if these rituals were widespread or unique to certain dynasties, adding an air of mystery to the practice. It's the kind of debate that makes you smile, knowing that even the past holds its secrets. A light-hearted moment emerges when the pharaoh jokes about how the palace cats seem to have more freedom than he does, lounging in the sun, demanding treats, and ignoring protocol. You can almost hear his amused sigh, a playful poke at the absurdities of royal life. Remember the perfume and protective oils? They reappear here, with the pharaoh noting how the queen's favorite scents fill the rooms, soothing worries and easing restless nights. It's a sensory thread that ties the letters together, like a gentle melody you hum as you drift off. The pharaoh also shares a charming story of a failed surprise picnic along the Nile, where a sudden sandstorm scattered their carefully packed food. You might chuckle imagining the royal couple chasing after rolling figs and bread, turning mishap into laughter, a timeless, relatable moment. This section ends with a quiet reflection on the power of love letters to transcend time, to offer solace and connection. You feel the calm settle deeper, as if the ancient words are wrapping you in a warm, familiar blanket, inviting you to let go and rest. You reach the final stretch of this journey, where the pharaoh's letters take on a tone of gentle farewell, not of endings, but of promises for reunions yet to come. His words are tender, filled with hope and a quiet strength that feels like a soft hand on your shoulder, encouraging calm and trust. The desert night stretches endlessly outside, but inside these letters, time folds gently, inviting you to linger in the warmth. The imagery here is rich with symbolism. The stars above the Nile, eternal and watchful, the slow, soothing flow of the river beneath the moonlight, the soft rustle of papyrus leaves as the breeze moves through the palace gardens. You can almost hear the faint laughter of the queen, the clink of delicate cups as they share a quiet evening apart but together in spirit. One letter speaks of an old custom where the pharaoh would carve messages into ivory pendants, worn close to the heart by the queen. The idea of holding a piece of love in your palm is as intimate now as it must have been then, a timeless symbol of closeness that transcends physical distance. Historians still debate whether these carvings were purely decorative or carried secret meanings, understood only by the royal couple. This ambiguity adds a subtle intrigue, a whisper of ancient secrets carried across centuries. The pharaoh's humor makes a final appearance, noting how he once mistook a royal advisor for a merchant because of his dusty sandals. "You probably wouldn't survive a day in my court," he jests. It's a light nudge, a reminder that behind the grandeur, there was always a human story, filled with quirks and moments of levity. You recall the earlier letters, the perfumes, the rituals, the tiny statues, now all come together in a tapestry of love that feels as tangible as the soft pillow beneath your head. The softness of the pharaoh's words begins to slow your thoughts, easing your mind away from the day's noise. As the section closes, you're invited to breathe deeply, feeling the gentle ebb and flow of the Nile mirrored in your own breath. The letters fade, but their warmth lingers, a quiet companion for your journey toward rest. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're now ready for a soothing closure to gently guide you toward sleep. Close your eyes slowly and feel the calm settle over you like a soft, warm blanket. Imagine the gentle rhythm of the Nile flowing peacefully beneath a silver moon, its quiet song lulling you into comfort. Each breath you take is like a soft breeze rustling through palm fronds, cool and steady, carrying away the worries of your day. The world around you grows quieter, softer, as the ancient love letters fade into a calm hum in your mind. You are safe here, in this moment, embraced by time and the gentle care of distant voices. Let the soothing sounds of a fan or a soft night whisper cradle you gently, wrapping you in stillness and peace. There's nothing more you need to do now but rest, letting the slow, timeless pulse of history rock you toward dreams as sweet and enduring as the love you've just shared. Your body feels lighter, your thoughts softer, drifting on the gentle current of night. Sleep well, wrapped in warmth and quiet, knowing this moment is yours alone, a peaceful pause before the new day. Let the serene calm carry you effortlessly, as if you were floating on the slow, steady Nile itself. End of script. Sweet dreams.